Video will concern the subject of Rust Legacy Beta, or just Rust Beta, the video game. This is back when it had zombies, as you can see on the screen here, and it also had some other, not monuments, but rad towns and that sort of thing. I'm going to be concentrating on anomalies that you see if you bring up the auto map that's available in some or all copies of Rust Legacy, depending on whether it updates itself correctly, and that's a whole other video I've already done. This is going to be concerning the lower part of the map, which is usually called Oil Field, the Barrels, or what used to be called Big Radtown. Let's move forward. This is a full-sized map that shows the entire island as it really is in Rust Legacy. All game engines, virtually all of them, when they do a terrain map, which is what this is based on, that has the generalized shape for your environment, almost all of them are going to use a square shape. You can also see in this, and this is actually done before they added big boulders to the game with the rocks update. You can see these dots here. These are done as markers to figure out how many squares of space you're using up. And right down here, this little area down here, we'll zoom in on. That's the actual play area, and there's one of those dots. In the distance between, let's say, this dot and this dot, or this dot and this dot, is the entire play area, effectively, that we have in the game that most people use in the original Rust 2013 map, the Rust Island map. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 by 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 1/16 of the area, or less, that people play in the game. If you find a server that offers something called the arena function or plugin, it allows you to have jumps that go to one of the other 16 locations. So you have 15 potential arenas. Each of these areas is treated as an arena. That's how the game is set up. You might have noticed that the mountain range that blocks off your view over the horizon is actually right on this cut line, and same thing here. That was intentional. And you can see one here, here. There's a lot more of it. And yes, right there, that's what I call the crater. It really is an impact crater. They really had that as an idea. But let's look at the map as it is. Now, this is before the rocks update of 2013-2014 that was discussed and or implemented, and it added in a much more interesting environment. Instead of everything being smooth hills and it being very nice that way, adding in the stones allowed you to have places to hide, and it made it more interesting looking. And as you can see from this, this is kind of odd compared to the map you might see if you hit the letter M while playing the game. And if you're not aware of it, this is one of the rad towns called Split Town. This is the one of them called the Factory Rad Town. Over here is the Big Rad Town, as it is called now. And here is the Hangar and some various other things. If we zoom in more, which we can do on this, we can see all this. At one time, this entire thing was available as a map plugin on many servers. Not anymore. There's only a few of them that do any kind of map activity that's interesting, and I find them all lacking, and, well, let's move forward. But I want to point out that you can see that this was essentially a blank area down here in this map. This has, if we zoom in heavily, a couple of little items here, which is the way it is now. Everything else is almost identical. I mean, really, very close. Now let's move forward again to the next map. This is the one that a lot of people use in-game, and this is called the AlphaCheeto map from 2014, just before July. And if we zoom in, we see some differences. This is actually an older map. This is from before the rocks update as well, but this is when there was still this anomaly here that we're going to be discussing. This is a very large rad town, or whatever you want to call it. This is big rad town here. You can see what that size is. This one's smaller. Let's zoom in heavily here so I can get a better comparison. This is the big rad town these days. This is the one that's slightly smaller than it. This is Split Town, and this is one that's much larger than all of them put together. Even though they all seem bigger or smaller based on their content, really, this one's huge, but it's not in the map anymore. Let's go forward. This is one of many modded maps you can get these days. This one includes a compass on screen, like in the modern version of Rust, and it includes a slightly busier map with lots of labels, but it still includes, under the word tanks or oil field as it was called, a bunch of buildings that aren't really there at all. It's also missing some of the other characteristics, like it doesn't show you where some things are. In fact, this is, again, an old map, again, from the Rocks update, but before the Rocks update. And this is the one you see in most versions of Rust Legacy off of rustlegacy.eu or legacyrust.eu, I forget which one. And again, it still has tanks. Let's move forward. This is the Rocks update, and this is done by Brandy92, Joshua Brand out of Brisbane, Australia. And this is the 2014 Rocks update that was done. This is the version that's accurate. It includes all the stones, almost all of them, and includes decent labeling. And there's old Radtown, because it's not a Radtown anymore. And it shows a big blanked area that was paved, so you'd appear to have an installation there. It's now covered with big stones. This is the next rock update. You can see a few videos I'll have a link to, where you can see this is an open area where they just removed all of the buildings we're going to look at today. And there it is. Now this is a composite of 2 screen grab components. It's very large. There's your smokestack for comparison. These are water towers, Connex containers. There's 2 hangars that are the large size that are also treated as being storage facilities that have closed, no openings in them. A lot of things. So let's move forward and look at it. But I want to point out, pay attention to what's running around up on top here. It's kind of funny. So here we see the tanks. There's the front of what would be considered the closed hangars or enclosed hangars that could have doors on them. These are shipping containers. It's very tall this way. And we're going to go around the back. This is a video someone else did again. I'm just making sure you know that. Here we see this one. This is as large as 2 or 3 of these containers on top of each other and double the height of a standard wall height that are used for bordering in all of these towns that were built. Here it is from the other side of the other 2. And we can see here there's some gantries. These are used for loading and storage and loading storage containers into trucks and that sort of thing. It's in the game. And yeah, it's double the height of one of these walls. Go forward. Here we are on the other side of the wall looking back at these hangar-like structures. They're basically a hangar with the front and back doors on them. And we see our gantries, several of them hooked to each other, nonsensically, I suppose. Next we go forward and we can see this here. This is called, I will have a link to Cutting Room Floor article on the subject, but in the background we can see all of this back here. That's another area that you could explore at one time. This guy who did the video didn't really explore it much. Now we can see it better from the side here. You can see more containers, and we can see that this has an opening at this end, and I think this is referred to as being a warehouse or something. We also see some buildings down here and some structure here next to this. You can see here that there's a place you could get up to, theoretically, on this smokestack. I'm not sure if there's a smokestack shaped like that that's reused on other servers. I've seen other servers try to reproduce something like this, but in another location. And yes, those are zombies on the roof because random generation, at least where they land. Let's move forward. We get pipes and such here. This is visible on a couple of websites that, again, are using the arena function and or just have a modded server where they're able to put these in. They usually require, but not always, they usually require you use a modded client. However, an unmodded client will still show most of this without crashing. I'd like to see somebody alter one of the sites to contain a copy of this just stuck someplace else, preferably in the north part of the map, so it'd be interesting, and let us have all these cool things. And again, there's a water tower or a supply tower for some material. Now we're up on top of it. We can see the feed-through space here for the piping. Very interesting stuff. And yes, there is a version of this at the big Radtown, but this one was bigger. It had, basically, I think what they did is that the lower part of the map, they threw every model in here almost. Let's move forward. Now we're seeing these buildings here. These have little slot-like windows in them and wood doors, and they're very consistent. I think it's a model that wasn't able to be entered into, which is a bad idea in a video game. It'll make people want to get into them. And my rule is make it not necessarily realistic, but make everything navigable. You should be able to get into the building. But anyway, We can see some piping here. There's another pipe back there that we'll see over this way. And now we can look back here and see, again, the back or entrance, I can't tell which, of what were these enclosed hangars. And now we're going out towards the second one of these two buildings. There's another one behind it. So there's three of these little box buildings, pillboxes, whatever you want to call them. And then out here we see our octagonal pipe and the building behind it. And then we go out here. This is when he was being clubbed to death because instead of pulling out a pistol, he kept using a hatchet. New mistake. So, and we have one big smokestack, some towers. You can see the entrance to this warehouse building that's two-layered, etc. So yeah, basically this seems to have been where they first started testing how they were going to arrange various assets in the game. And that was the entire video. The video goes on for over 20 minutes, and this is only a 1-minute portion of it. And it's one of a few videos that show the area as it was at the time. And after this, it was made into a blank area where all of the loot spawns were just dropped on the ground where they were. And it didn't have anything out here except two fuel tanks. And then later on, rocks were added to make it much more interesting and make it to where there's some barrier for entry, so you'd have to take a certain path. Anyway, this has been about the Rust Legacy map beta version, where this area wasn't a blank area, nor was it filled with rocks. It was really like this. And if we go ahead and zoom in on this somewhat clean version of it, we can see our two hangars, the really big warehouse area, and those are some gantries. And this appears to be missing the building, not the building, but the walls. So it went through lots of revisions. And it appears that they used this area to put everything in it at once, and then that's what they used to populate the other area. It's very common to make what's called a build room if you're making a video game, where you throw all the assets into an empty box area and then build from there. And that makes it to where you can do all the lighting checks and make sure all the things you're adding in look good without ever adding them into the map. If there's a defect when you do that, your build room is usually somewhere nobody's going to reach. So if something screws up, if you can't remove it, at least it won't be in the game and it won't tie up processor cycles. That's really why we use those when we make video games. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting. I thought it'd be something that some of you might be interested in watching. And I thank the person who uploaded the video. Links below in the description so you can see the whole thing. It's a pretty good video. He yammers almost as much as I do. But anyway, thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. Bye.